I wasn't supposed to be there. That's probably the first thing you need to understand. If anyone from work had asked me what I did that Friday night, I would have said something boring. Takeout, Netflix, maybe an early sleep. The kind of answer that doesn't invite follow-up questions. The kind of answer that keeps your personal life exactly where you want it, separate. But instead, I was standing in the middle of a packed gay club, bass thumping through my chest, lights cutting across the room like chaos had a rhythm, and I had just locked eyes with my boss. Maxwell. Yeah. That Maxwell. The same guy who sat at the head of the conference table every Monday morning, sleeves rolled up just enough to show his watch, voice calm and controlled like nothing ever rattled him. The same guy who barely smiled, who always seemed 2 steps ahead of everyone else in the room, including me. And now he was here. In a place where I was very clearly not supposed to exist in his world. For a second, I genuinely thought I was imagining it. Like my brain had glitched from the alcohol, or the noise, or just the sheer absurdity of the situation. But no, there he was, leaning casually against the bar, looking different. Looser. Not in a messy way. Just less guarded. No tie. Top buttons undone. His usual sharp edges softened by dim lighting and something unreadable in his expression. And he was looking straight at me. I turned away immediately. Not subtle about it either. Full-on panic pivot, like if I broke eye contact fast enough, I could undo what just happened. "Dude, you okay?" My friend Liam shouted over the music, grabbing my shoulder. I shook my head, trying to play it off. Yeah, I just thought I saw someone. Hot someone or scary someone? Both. He laughed, but I wasn't joking. Because here's the thing, Maxwell didn't know I was gay. At least, I didn't think he did. I kept that part of my life pretty quiet at work. Not because I was ashamed or anything, but because, well, offices are weird. People talk. Things shift. And Maxwell? He wasn't just a coworker. He decided whether I got promoted. I grabbed my drink, suddenly very aware of everything, how I was standing, what I was wearing, the fact that I had been dancing like an idiot 5 minutes ago. "Relax," Liam said, clearly misreading the situation. "Even if it is someone you know, who cares? You're allowed to exist." Easy for him to say. I took a sip, forcing myself to breathe, to act normal. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it just looked like him. Plenty of guys had that same clean-cut, corporate energy. Right. Joseph. I froze. That voice, low, steady, unmistakable, cut through everything. Slowly, I turned around. And there he was. Up close this time. Maxwell didn't look surprised anymore. If anything, he looked composed. Like he had already processed the situation and moved on to whatever came next. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, and there was the faintest hint of something in his tone. Not judgment. Not exactly amusement either. Just awareness. My brain completely short-circuited. "Yeah, I mean, same," I managed, immediately hating how awkward I sounded. "Great. Stellar. Really professional, Joseph." For a second, neither of us said anything. The music filled the gap, people moving around us like we were just 2 strangers having a normal conversation. But it didn't feel normal. Not even close. Maxwell glanced around briefly, then back at me. "You come here often?" Was he serious? I let out a small, nervous laugh. Sometimes." He nodded slowly, like he was filing that information away. "Good to know." "Good to know? What does that even mean?" I shifted my weight, suddenly hyper-aware of how close we were standing. Close enough that I could actually smell his cologne, something subtle, clean. Familiar in a way that made my chest tighten because I'd only ever noticed it across a conference table before. This was different. Everything about this was different. "You're with friends?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, gesturing vaguely behind me. "They dragged me out. That's usually how it starts." There it was again, that slight edge of something in his voice. Like he was speaking from experience. which raised a whole new set of questions I wasn't prepared to deal with. Before I could respond, someone brushed past me, knocking into my shoulder. I stumbled slightly, and Maxwell's hand caught my arm. It was quick, instinctive. But he didn't pull away right away. For a split second, we just stood there. And I swear, the noise of the club dropped out completely. "You okay?" he asked, quieter this time. "Yeah," I said, but my voice came out lower than I expected. His hand was still there. Warm. Steady. And then, like he suddenly remembered where we were, he let go. "Careful," he added, stepping back just enough to put space between us again. "Right. Space. Good. Necessary." I nodded, trying to get my head back on straight. "You too." He huffed a small laugh at that, barely there, but real. And somehow, that made everything worse. Because Maxwell never laughed like that at work. Not with me. Not like this. "I should, get back to my friends," I said, even though part of me didn't actually want to move. "Of course," he replied easily. But as I turned to leave, he added, "Joseph." I looked back. His expression had shifted again. More serious now. More intentional. "Let's keep this between us." Not a question. A statement. And something about the way he said it sent a quiet thrill straight through me. "Yeah," I said. "Of course." I walked away after that, heart pounding way harder than it should have been. But I didn't go back to dancing. Didn't go back to normal. Because I could still feel it, that moment. The look in his eyes. And the very real, very dangerous thought settling in the back of my mind. I had just seen a completely different side of Maxwell. And I wasn't sure I wanted to forget it. I tried to pretend it didn't happen. Seriously, I gave it a solid effort. I went back to Liam, forced myself to laugh at whatever story he was halfway through, even danced for a bit just to prove to myself that I could still act normal. But it was useless. Because no matter where I stood in that club, I was aware of him. Maxwell wasn't even doing anything obvious. He wasn't staring, wasn't hovering. If anything, he blended in too well, just another guy at the bar, occasionally talking to someone, occasionally sipping his drink. But I felt it. That pull. Like my brain had decided he was the most important thing in the room whether I liked it or not. "Okay, what is going on with you?" Liam finally said, grabbing my arm and pulling me a little closer so he didn't have to shout as much. "You've checked the same corner like 10 times. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "I told you, I saw someone." "Yeah, and now I want details." I hesitated. This was one of those moments where saying it out loud would make it real. "It's my boss," I said finally. Liam blinked. Wait, the boss? Like corporate, scary, always judging you, boss?" "Yeah." He stared at me for half a second, then broke into a grin. "Oh, that's messy." "Don't," I muttered. "No, I'm serious," he said, clearly way too entertained. "Is he hot?" I didn't answer right away. Which, honestly, was answer enough. Liam's grin widened. "Oh my God, he is, isn't he?" "That's not the point." "It's absolutely the point." I shook my head, taking another sip of my drink just to have something to do. "It's just complicated." "Complicated how?" "You're both here, in the same place, for the same reason." "Or," I said, lowering my voice, "he could just be here with friends." "It doesn't mean anything." Liam gave me a look. "Joseph, you're in a gay club." "Yeah. And your boss is also in that gay club." I stared at him. He raised an eyebrow. "Connect the dots." I groaned, dragging a hand down my face. "I know, okay? This changes things." "Does it?" "Yes," I said immediately. "At work?" "Yeah, it does." Liam tilted his head, studying me for a second. "Or it just reveals things." That stuck with me more than I expected. Before I could respond, he nudged me lightly. "Speaking of revelations, don't look now, but he's looking at you again." Of course he was. I didn't turn right away. I told myself I wouldn't. That I was done feeding into whatever this weird tension was. But then, I looked. And yeah, Maxwell was watching me. Not in a subtle, passing way. Fully. And the second our eyes met, he didn't look away this time. There was something different in his expression now. Less neutral. More direct. Like he had made a decision. Okay. Liam muttered beside me, clearly picking up on it too. That is not a casual work acquaintance look. I hate you, I said under my breath. You love me. Now go talk to him. I already did. Then do it again. Before I could argue, Liam gave me a not-so-subtle push forward. Go, he said. If this turns into some dramatic workplace romance, I want front-row seats. I shot him a glare, but I didn't go back. Not immediately. Because the truth was, I didn't need to. Maxwell was already moving. It wasn't rushed. Not awkward. Just deliberate. And suddenly he was standing in front of me again, like this was the most natural thing in the world. You left pretty quickly, he said. I let out a small breath. Yeah, well, wasn't sure what the protocol is for running into your boss here. One corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Fair point. There was a beat of silence. Do you want another drink? He asked. That caught me off guard. I blinked. This one's on me, he added, nodding toward my half-empty glass. I hesitated for exactly half a second before nodding. Sure. We moved to the bar together, and the shift in dynamic was immediate. At work, Maxwell always felt above me. Not in an arrogant way, just structurally. There were boundaries, expectations. Here? Standing next to him, shoulder to shoulder, waiting for drinks like two normal people, it felt weirdly equal. Grounded. Vodka soda? He asked, glancing at my glass. Yeah. He ordered for both of us without hesitation, like he already knew what he was doing here. Like this wasn't new for him. Which, again, raised questions. So, I said, leaning lightly against the bar. Do you come here often? He gave me a look. You already asked me that. Yeah, but you didn't really answer. A small pause. Then he exhaled, almost like he was deciding how honest to be. Sometimes, he said. Not regularly. But enough. I nodded slowly. That was confirmation, whether he said it outright or not. And for some reason that made my chest feel tight. Not bad. Just intense. And you? He asked. Is this your usual scene? Sometimes, I echoed, and he let out a quiet huff of amusement at that. We fell into a strange rhythm after that. Easy conversation. Nothing too personal, but not shallow either. Work came up briefly, inevitable, but it didn't dominate. It was like we were both carefully stepping around something bigger. Until. You're different here. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Maxwell turned his head slightly, studying me. Different how? I hesitated, then shrugged. Less intimidating. He raised an eyebrow. I'm intimidating? At work? Yeah. That's not intentional. I know, I said quickly. It's just, you're very in control all the time. And I'm not now. There it was again, that edge in his voice. Not defensive. Just curious. I met his gaze, holding it this time. No, I said quietly. Now you seem relaxed? Something shifted in his expression. Subtle. But real. Maybe that's because I don't have to be your boss right now. The way he said it. It landed heavier than it should have. Because it wasn't just an observation. It felt like a line. And suddenly, I was very aware of how close we were again. How easy it would be to forget everything outside this moment. Still applies tomorrow, I said, even though my voice had dropped slightly. Of course, he replied. But he didn't move. Didn't create distance. If anything, he leaned in just a fraction. Which is why, he added, quieter now. We should probably be careful. Careful. Yeah. That made sense. That was the smart thing. The right thing. So why did it feel like either of us was actually stepping back? And why did I have the very clear feeling that this night was only just getting started? I should have left after that. That would have been the smart move. Finish the drink, say something polite, go back to my friends, and let the night fade into one of those weird, almost surreal moments you laugh about later. But I didn't. Neither did he. We stayed at the bar longer than necessary, conversation stretching in that easy, almost dangerous way where you stop keeping track of time. It wasn't even about what we were saying anymore. It was the way we were saying it. Closer. Quieter. Like the rest of the club had started to blur out around us. At some point, I realized I hadn't checked my phone in a while. Liam had definitely texted me something chaotic by now, but I didn't reach for it. I didn't want to break whatever this was. Maxwell shifted slightly beside me, his arm brushing mine again, not by accident this time. It was subtle, but I felt it. And he didn't move away. Do your friends know? He asked suddenly. I blinked. Know what? He gave me a look. Right. That I'm gay? I clarified. He nodded. Yeah, I said. Most of them. And at work? There it was. The line we'd been dancing around. I exhaled lightly, leaning back against the bar. Not really. I mean, I don't hide it, but I don't exactly advertise it either. He hummed, like he understood that completely. Same, he said after a second. That hit differently. Not because I didn't already suspect it, but hearing him say it, even in that indirect way, made it real. Maxwell glanced down at his drink, then back at me. It's easier to keep things separate. Yeah, I agreed. Less complicated. A pause. Then he added, Is it? I frowned slightly. Usually. But not tonight, he said. It wasn't a question. And I didn't have a good answer for that. Before I could even try, the music shifted, something louder, heavier, pulling more people toward the dance floor. The energy in the room spiked instantly. Maxwell followed my glance toward the crowd. Do you dance? He asked. I let out a short laugh. Not well. Didn't ask that. I looked back at him. There was something different in his expression again. Less restrained. More intentional. You're serious? I asked. Why not? Why not? That was becoming a dangerous phrase tonight. I hesitated just long enough to know I was about to make a decision I couldn't take back later. Then I said, Okay. Big mistake. Or maybe not. Because the second we stepped onto the dance floor, everything shifted again. It was darker there. Closer. Bodies moving in every direction, no real space to think, just react. At first, it was normal. We kept a bit of distance, moving to the beat, nothing that would have raised eyebrows anywhere else. But then, someone bumped into me from behind, pushing me forward slightly. Right into him. My hands instinctively came up, catching his sides to steady myself. And just like earlier, he didn't pull away. If anything, his hands settled at my waist for a second longer than necessary. Careful, he said again, but this time there was something else behind it. I let out a quiet breath, realizing how close we actually were now. Closer than before. Closer than was safe. Seems to be a pattern tonight, I replied. He huffed softly, his grip tightening just slightly before easing again, but not fully letting go. And that's when it stopped feeling accidental. The space between us didn't open back up. It stayed like that. Charged. The music made it easy to justify. Everyone around us was moving, bodies brushing, hands landing where they landed. But this felt intentional. Maxwell's hands shifted slightly at my waist, not gripping, just there. Grounding. My heart was beating way too fast. I should have stepped back. I didn't. Instead, I adjusted my stance, just enough that we were moving together now instead of separately. And yeah, he noticed. I could see it in the way his expression changed, just for a second. That same flicker from earlier. Like he was realizing I wasn't pulling away either. Joseph, he said, my name barely audible over the music. Yeah? His hands tightened slightly again. This is a bad idea. I let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Probably. Neither of us moved. If anyone from work saw this, he started. They didn't. I cut in. That's not the point. Then what is? That made him pause. Actually pause. Like he didn't have a clean, controlled answer ready for once. And for some reason, that did something to me. Because Maxwell always had answers. Always. But right now, standing this close, his hands still resting at my waist, his eyes locked on mine, he looked uncertain. And that made this feel even more real. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. The words hit harder than they should have. Because he wasn't joking. Wasn't teasing. He was giving me an out. A clear one. And I knew that if I took even half a step back, he'd let go immediately. This would end right here, clean, contained, something we could both pretend never almost happened. I should have said it. Should have done the smart thing. Instead, I shook my head. Just slightly. And that was all it took. Because the second I did, something in him shifted. Not dramatic. Not reckless. Just decided. His hands moved, still at my waist, but firmer now, pulling me just a fraction closer. And this time? There was nothing accidental about it. Nothing at all. And standing there, in the middle of a crowded club, with my boss holding me just a little too close, I realized something I probably should have figured out earlier. This wasn't just a moment. This was the start of something way more complicated than either of us was ready for. Everything after that felt sharper. Like the night had shifted into something more focused, more real, and way harder to ignore. We didn't say anything for a while after that moment on the dance floor. There wasn't really anything to say. The music was loud, the crowd tight around us, but somehow it felt like we were in our own space. Maxwell's hands stayed where they were, steady at my waist, not moving further, but not letting go either. It wasn't rushed. That's the thing that stuck with me the most. There was no desperation in it. No recklessness. Just intention. And somehow, that made it worse. Or better. I hadn't decided yet. Eventually, he eased his grip slightly, not pulling away completely, just enough to create a bit of space again. Enough to breathe. Drink? He said, leaning closer so I could hear him. I nodded, probably a little too quickly. We made our way off the dance floor, and the second we stepped out of that packed crowd, reality hit just a little harder. The noise dropped. The space widened. And suddenly, I was very aware of what had just happened. Maxwell seemed to feel it too. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly like he was resetting himself. Probably a good idea, he muttered, more to himself than to me. Yeah, I agreed, though my voice didn't sound as steady as I wanted it to. We reached the bar again, but this time it felt different. Less casual. More loaded. He ordered drinks again without asking, sliding one toward me before leaning against the counter. Not too close this time. A deliberate shift. So, I said, trying to ground the moment in something normal. This is unexpected. That's one way to put it. I huffed a quiet laugh, staring down at my glass. You're handling it pretty well. Am I? I glanced at him. His expression said otherwise. You seem composed, I clarified. He held my gaze for a second, then shook his head slightly. I'm really not. That honesty caught me off guard. Maxwell wasn't the kind of person who admitted that easily. Then why do you look like you have everything under control? I asked. Because I'm used to pretending I do. That landed heavier than anything else he'd said tonight. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he added, quieter, This isn't exactly a situation I planned for. Running into me? I asked. His eyes flicked to mine. No, he said. Not wanting to stay. Yeah, that did something to me. I swallowed, trying to keep my reaction from showing too much. You could have left. So could you. Fair. I let out a slow breath, leaning back against the bar. Guess either of us made the smart choice. Doesn't seem like it. Another pause. But this one felt different. Less tense. More honest. I glanced around briefly, then back at him. So what now? That was the question, wasn't it? Maxwell didn't answer right away. He took a sip of his drink, eyes thoughtful, like he was actually weighing his words instead of just saying the safest thing. That depends, he said finally. On? Whether tonight stays, just tonight. There it was. The line clear as day. I felt my chest tighten slightly. And if it doesn't? I asked. His jaw shifted, just slightly. Then it gets complicated. I let out a quiet laugh. It's already complicated. Not like that. I knew what he meant. Work. Power dynamics. All the things we hadn't said out loud but were very much there. Still. You're the one who said we should be careful. I pointed out. I did. And? He looked at me again. Really looked this time. And I meant it. There was no hesitation in that. No mixed signals. Just truth. But he didn't step away. Didn't put distance between us. If anything, he leaned in slightly, just enough that I could hear him clearly without him raising his voice. That doesn't mean I don't want this, he added. And yeah, that was the moment everything tipped. Because up until now, we'd been dancing around it, hiding behind implications, almost, and what-ifs. But that was direct. Clear. And impossible to ignore. I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening slightly around my glass. You're making this really hard to walk away from. A faint smirk touched his lips. Not my intention. Feels like it. Joseph. The way he said my name. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't authority. It was something else entirely. Be honest, he said quietly. I met his gaze, already knowing where this was going. Do you want to walk away? Simple question. Complicated answer. I could have said yes. Should have said yes. Instead, no, I said. And just like before, that was all it took. Maxwell's expression shifted again, not surprised, not even relieved. Just settled. Like something had clicked into place. Okay, he said. Okay. That was it. No dramatic speech. No overthinking. Just, okay. But the way he said it? It felt like a decision. A real one. And suddenly, the energy between us wasn't uncertain anymore. It was intentional. Focused. And way harder to ignore. Come on, he added after a second, setting his glass down. I frowned slightly. Where? Quieter, he said simply. I hesitated for half a second. Then followed him. Following him was the moment it really hit me. I wasn't just caught up in this situation anymore. I was choosing it. Maxwell didn't grab my hand or anything obvious like that. He just moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, glancing back once to make sure I was still there. I was. Of course I was. He led us away from the main floor, past the bar, down a dim hallway that opened into a smaller lounge area. It was still part of the club, but quieter, low lighting, fewer people, music softened into more of a background pulse than something that took over your whole body. It felt private. Not empty, but removed enough that the intensity shifted from chaotic to focused. Maxwell stopped near one of the walls, turning to face me. For a second, either of us spoke. And without the noise, without the distraction. Everything from earlier rushed back in at once. You okay? He asked. It was the same question as before. But it didn't feel the same. Yeah, I said, though my voice came out quieter now. You. A small pause. Then he nodded. Yeah. But again, he didn't look completely okay. He looked conflicted. And I realized something then. This wasn't just risky for me. It was risky for him too. Probably more. You don't have to do this, I said before I could stop myself. His expression shifted slightly. Do what? This? I gestured lightly between us. Stay. Continue whatever this is. I know. That wasn't what I expected. I frowned slightly. Then why are you? He held my gaze steady, unflinching. Because I want to. There it was again. That directness. No room to misinterpret. My chest tightened. You're making it really hard to be the responsible one here, I muttered. That earned a faint, almost real smile from him. I have a feeling you weren't planning on being that anyway. You're not wrong. A quiet moment passed between us. Not awkward. Just charged. The kind where you're both aware that something is about to happen. You just don't know who's going to move first. Or how far it's going to go. Maxwell shifted slightly, stepping just a little closer. Not enough to touch. Just enough that I felt it. Joseph, he said, voice lower now, more controlled, but underneath that, there was something else. Something tighter. Yeah? If this goes further, he continued, we don't pretend it didn't happen. That caught me off guard. I blinked. What? I'm serious. His tone didn't waver. I'm not interested in something that gets buried the second we walk into the office on Monday. That wasn't what I expected him to say. At all. I had assumed, if anything, that he'd want the opposite. Keep it hidden. Separate. Clean. But this? This was different. You're saying you'd, what? Acknowledge it? I asked. I'm saying I wouldn't treat you like a mistake. That hit harder than anything else tonight. For a second, I didn't even know what to say. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about attraction. It wasn't just a reckless moment in a dark club. This had weight. Real weight. Maxwell, I started, but I didn't even know how to finish that sentence. He stepped closer again. This time, there was no space left between us. I need to know you understand that, he said quietly. I do, I said, my voice barely above a breath. And I wouldn't treat you like that either. Another shift. Subtle. But I felt it. The tension changed from uncertain to aligned. Like we had just crossed some invisible line without even touching. His hand moved. Slow. Deliberate. Not to my waist this time. Higher. Resting lightly against my side, just under my ribs. Testing. Giving me time to pull away. I didn't. My hand came up almost instinctively, settling against his arm, not stopping him, not pushing him. Just there. And yeah, that was it. That was the moment everything snapped into place. Because the second he realized I wasn't hesitating, his grip tightened slightly. Not forceful. Just certain. Still a bad idea, I murmured. Definitely, he replied. Neither of us moved away. If anything, we both leaned in just a fraction. Close enough that I could feel his breath now. Close enough that one small movement would. Joseph, he said again, quieter this time. Yeah? His eyes dropped briefly to my mouth. Then back up. Last chance. I let out a soft breath. If you keep giving me those, I said, I'm going to keep ignoring them. That was the moment he smiled. Not the small, controlled ones from earlier. A real one. And then, he closed the distance. It wasn't rushed. Wasn't aggressive. It was slow. Intentional. Like he was making absolutely sure I had time to stop him. I didn't. So when his lips finally met mine, it felt exactly like everything leading up to it. Controlled on the surface. But underneath? There was nothing controlled about it at all. The kiss wasn't what I expected. Not because it was hesitant, but because it wasn't. Maxwell kissed like everything else about him, controlled, deliberate, like he knew exactly what he was doing and had already thought 3 steps ahead. But underneath that control, there was tension. The kind you don't fake. His hand stayed firm at my side, pulling me just slightly closer as the kiss deepened, not rushed, not messy, just certain. I kissed him back. Without hesitation. Without overthinking it for once. Because at that point, there wasn't really a line left to cross. We were already past it. When we finally pulled back, it wasn't abrupt. Just a slow shift, like neither of us wanted to break the moment too quickly. I could still feel his breath, still feel the warmth of his hand where it hadn't moved. For a second, we just looked at each other. No masks. No workplace distance. Just this. That, I said quietly. Definitely didn't help the bad idea situation. A faint smirk tugged at his lips, but his eyes stayed focused on mine. No. It didn't. Neither of us moved. Which probably said everything. I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. We should think about this. We are thinking about it, he said. You know what I mean. I do. But he didn't step away. Didn't let go. If anything, his thumb shifted slightly against my side, small, almost absent-minded, but it sent a sharp awareness straight through me. This doesn't stay here, he added. I frowned slightly. Meaning? Meaning I'm not interested in pretending this was just a moment we got carried away in. There it was again. That same clarity from before. Consistent. Intentional. And if it wasn't? I asked. His gaze didn't waver. Then we figure out what it is. That should have made things feel heavier. More complicated. But weirdly, it didn't. It made it feel grounded. Real. Okay, I said after a second. And I meant it. That seemed to settle something in him. His grip eased slightly, not letting go, just shifting into something less tense, more natural. Like we weren't standing on the edge of something anymore. We were already in it. A couple walked past us, laughing, pulling each other toward the main floor. The noise from the club bled back in just a little, reminding me where we actually were. Reality creeping back. Your friends are probably wondering where you disappeared to, Maxwell said. Yeah, I admitted. Liam's definitely spiraling right now. That earned a small, genuine laugh from him again. I shook my head, smiling despite myself. He's going to lose his mind when I tell him this. You're going to tell him? I tell him everything. Maxwell considered that for a second, then nodded. Fair enough. I should probably head out soon, he said. That caught me off guard. Oh. Not exactly the smoothest response. His expression softened slightly. Early morning tomorrow. Right. Yeah. Of course. Work. There it was again. The thing waiting for us outside this moment. For a second, either of us moved. And then I realized. I didn't want this to just end here. Not like this. So, what happens now? I asked. Maxwell looked at me for a long second. Like he was choosing his answer carefully. I'll text you. I blinked. You have my number? A faint smirk. I'm your boss, Joseph. Right. That makes sense. That small bit of normal logic somehow made everything feel even more surreal. He finally stepped back then. Not far. Just enough to break the contact. I felt it immediately. That absence. We'll talk, he added. Not vague. Not dismissive. Certain. Okay, I said. Another beat. Then he nodded once, like that settled it. He turned and walked away. No dramatic exit. No lingering hesitation. Just gone. I stood there for a second, staring after him, trying to process what the hell had just happened. Because less than an hour ago, I was just another guy out with friends. And now? I had just kissed my boss in a dim corner of a club, agreed not to pretend it didn't happen, and apparently, we were going to figure out what it is. Joseph! Liam's voice snapped me out of it as he appeared out of nowhere, looking equal parts concerned and way too excited. Where the hell did you go? He demanded, eyes scanning my face. And why do you look like that? Like what? Like you just made a terrible decision and kind of loved it. I let out a breath, running a hand through my hair again. That's actually very accurate. His eyes widened. No way. I hesitated for half a second, then said it. I kissed him. Liam froze. You what? Yeah. That was about the reaction I expected. And somehow, saying it out loud made it feel even more real. Because this wasn't just a moment anymore. It wasn't something I could brush off or pretend didn't matter. This was happening. And something told me. The hardest part wasn't what just happened in that club. It was what was going to happen when I saw Maxwell again on Monday. I barely slept that night. Not because I was out late, though, yeah. That didn't help, but because my brain refused to shut up. Every time I closed my eyes, it replayed. The look he gave me across the club. The way his voice dropped when he said my name. That moment on the dance floor when neither of us stepped back. And then, the kiss. I groaned into my pillow around 3 a.m., flipping over for what had to be the 10th time. This is such a bad idea, I muttered to myself. Which, honestly, made it worse. Because I didn't regret it. Not even a little. Saturday and Sunday dragged in the most frustrating way possible. Maxwell didn't text. Which, I mean, logically that made sense. He said he would, not when. And it wasn't like he owed me a play-by-play update of his weekend. But still. I checked my phone way more than I wanted to admit. Liam, on the other hand, was thriving. I need updates, he said for the third time while we were getting coffee Sunday morning. Like constant updates. This is the most interesting thing that's ever happened to you. Thanks, I muttered. I'm serious. Your hot, intimidating boss turned out to be secretly gay and then kissed you in a club? That's… He paused, searching for the right word. That's premium content. It's also my actual life, I pointed out. Exactly. Which is why I'm invested. I shook my head, but I couldn't help the small smile. Did he text you yet? He asked. No. Don't me. I'm just saying. He shrugged. If he doesn't, that's a choice. I know. And yeah. That thought had crossed my mind too. But something about the way Maxwell had said we'll talk. It didn't feel like empty words. It felt certain. Still, by Sunday night, I was starting to second-guess everything. Maybe I read too much into it. Maybe for him, it was just a moment. Maybe. My phone buzzed. I froze. Liam, who was sprawled across my couch, immediately sat up. Is that him? I don't know, I said, already reaching for it. But yeah. It was. Maxwell, hey. You free to talk? Simple. Straightforward. Very him. And somehow, that made my chest tighten. Okay, Liam said, watching me way too closely. Breathe. Don't overthink. Respond like a normal human being. I am a normal human being. You've checked your phone like 400 times today. Shut up. I typed back before I could overanalyze it. Me, yeah? What's up? The reply came almost immediately. Maxwell, I'd rather talk in person. Of course he would. I exhaled slowly. He wants to meet. Liam's grin was immediate. Oh, this is good. It's not good, it's… I stopped, running a hand through my hair. It's something. When? Didn't say yet. Another message came in. Maxwell, tomorrow. After work. If that's okay. Monday. Of course it was Monday. Yeah, I muttered. That tracks. Liam leaned forward. Say yes. Obviously say yes. I was going to. Just making sure you don't spiral and ghost your own boss. I'm not going to ghost my boss, I said, already typing. Me, yeah? That works. There was a pause this time. Longer. Maxwell, good. We'll keep things normal at the office. I stared at the message for a second. That word again. Normal. After everything that happened, that felt almost funny. Me got it. Another pause. Maxwell, see you tomorrow, Joseph. And that was it. No emoji. No extra comment. Just him. I locked my phone, exhaling slowly. Well? Liam asked. We're meeting tomorrow after work. He grinned. You're so screwed. I know. But the thing was, I didn't feel screwed. I felt nervous, yeah? But also certain. Because whatever this was, it wasn't over. Monday morning hit different. Everything looked the same. Same building. Same desk. Same routine. But it didn't feel the same. Not even close. I got there early, hoping to settle in before my brain could spiral too much. It didn't work. Every sound felt louder. Every glance felt more noticeable. Morning, Joseph. I froze. That voice. I turned slowly. Maxwell stood a few feet away, exactly like he always did. Suit. Composed expression. Coffee in hand. Like nothing had happened. Morning, I replied, forcing myself to match his tone. Normal. We were doing normal. Ready for the 10 a.m. meeting? He asked. Yeah. Got everything prepped. Good. A small nod. Professional. Efficient. And then he walked past me like he hadn't had his hands on my waist 2 nights ago. Like he hadn't kissed me. Like none of it existed here. And for a second, I actually wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. Until, as he passed, just briefly, his hand brushed against mine. Quick. Subtle. No one else would have noticed. But I did. And he didn't look at me. Didn't react. Just kept walking. But that one small touch? That was enough. Because it told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't over. Not even close. The entire day felt like a test. Not of my work, I had that under control. But of my ability to act like nothing had changed, when everything had. Maxwell didn't treat me any differently. Meetings, emails, quick check-ins, it was all exactly the same. Professional. Focused. Efficient. If anyone had walked in and observed us, they would have seen nothing unusual. But I noticed the details. The way his tone dipped slightly when it was just the two of us. The way his gaze lingered half a second longer than it should have. The way he didn't touch me again. Not even by accident. Like he was being careful. Deliberate. Saving it. Which somehow made the anticipation worse. By the time 5 p.m. rolled around, I was more restless than I wanted to admit. I packed up slower than usual, trying not to look like I was waiting. Which I absolutely was. You heading out? A coworker asked as they passed my desk. Yeah, I said casually. Just wrapping up. They nodded and left. I glanced at the clock again. 5:07. Joseph. I didn't even pretend to be surprised this time. I looked up. Maxwell stood there, same as this morning, but there was something different now. Less guarded. Walk with me, he said. Not a question. I grabbed my bag without a word and followed him out. We didn't talk until we were outside. The air was cooler, quieter, like stepping out of one world and into another. Maxwell stopped a short distance from the building, turning to face me. The distance from the office dropped. Gone. So, I said, exhaling lightly, this is the part where we figure out what that was. That's the idea. A brief silence. I meant what I said, he added. About not pretending it didn't happen. I know. And I meant what I said about being careful. I nodded. Also know that. His gaze held mine. And you still showed up. I huffed a small laugh. You told me to. That's not why. No. It wasn't. I wanted to, I admitted. Something in his expression softened at that. Not dramatically. Just enough. Good, he said quietly. Another pause. But this one didn't feel tense. It felt steady. Like we were finally standing on solid ground instead of guessing. So what does careful actually look like? I asked. Maxwell considered that for a second. Honest, he said. Clear boundaries at work. And outside of work? His eyes didn't leave mine. We figure it out. That again. Simple. But not vague. I nodded slowly. Okay. He stepped a little closer then. Not too close, not like the club. Just enough that it felt intentional. Tell me if this gets too complicated, he said. I will. And if it starts affecting your work? It won't. A small pause. Then I added, but if it does, you tell me too. That earned a faint, approving look. Deal. Another beat. Are you busy tonight? He asked. Straight to the point. I shook my head. No. Dinner? There it was. Not a hidden thing. Not a, let's see what happens. A date. I felt a small smile pull at the corner of my mouth. Yeah. I'd like that. Good. He exhaled, like that settled something. 7? He added. 7 works. Another quiet pause. This time, when he stepped closer. It wasn't hesitant. His hand brushed mine again, but slower now. Intentional. And instead of pulling away, I let my fingers catch his, just briefly. Not obvious. Not something anyone walking by would clock immediately. But enough. Enough to feel it. Maxwell glanced down at that. Just for a second. Then back at me. And for the first time since this all started, he smiled. Not controlled. Not restrained. Just real. I'll see you at 7, Joseph. Yeah, I said. You will. He let go first this time. Stepping back, resetting just enough before turning to leave. But it felt different now. Not like something unfinished. Like something just beginning. And standing there, watching him walk away, I realized something. Meeting my boss at a gay club? That wasn't the crazy part. The crazy part was how quickly it turned into something real. Something intentional. Something neither of us was running from. It was complicated. It was risky. It was probably going to make things messy at some point. But as I pulled out my phone to text Liam, so, I have a date with him tonight. I couldn't help it. I was already looking forward to what came next.